In a league built on silence, one leak changed everything. It was just another Browns film session until Shedeur Sanders spoke up. The footage showed him absorbing a brutal post-throw hit with zero consequence, and that clip triggered something deeper than anger. Sanders launched into an unscripted, visceral takedown of a system that sells protection but delivers privilege. His teammates were stunned. And when the audio leaked, the NFL was too.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Because this wasn't an outsider throwing stones, it was a quarterback on the inside, naming names and laying bare the industry's unspoken tears. The fallout wasn't a rule change. It was a strategy memo. Goodell and the competition committee scrambled to control the story, not fix the standard. Mahomes' behind-the-scenes agreement with Sanders wasn't a rallying cry. It was a quiet confession that even greatness can't deny the truth. And while some critics tried to dismiss Sanders as just Deion's son, the moment made it clear. Legacy didn't earn him this platform, courage did. The NFL has always had its untouchables, those few players so vital to the league's brand that everything shifts when they go down. And for the past few years, Patrick Mahomes has been the face of that reality. Commercial darling. Ratings magnet. MVP. But what Shedeur Sanders did wasn't call out Mahomes the person. It was calling out what Mahomes represents in a system built on protecting profit, not principle. This controversy didn't come from a press conference or social media post. It started in a film room, during a standard team meeting inside the Cleveland Browns facility. A review session that turned into a turning point. When Sanders watched himself absorb yet another late, dangerous hit, after the ball was long gone, again without a flag, without reaction, without any accountability, he didn't stay quiet. He spoke. The comments were unscripted, emotional, and leaked to the media. But they weren't reckless. They were dead on. Sanders pointed out the glaring inconsistency in how quarterback safety rules are applied. He didn't ask for favoritism. He demanded fairness. He laid it out in plain terms. When Patrick Mahomes rolls his ankle, the league stops to breathe. Replays flood every channel. Analysts jump in with theories. The broadcast slows down. There's concern, outrage, and discussion about rule tweaks before the next snap. But when Shedeur Sanders gets drilled in the back after releasing the ball, silence. No flag. No replay. No concern. Just another young quarterback taking hits no one talks about. And his point wasn't even about Mahomes personally. It was about value. The NFL treats its quarterbacks based on what they're worth to the league, not what they're worth as players or as people, but what they generate. Mahomes is a billion-dollar asset. His injuries threaten ratings, merchandise, international markets. Shedeur, as a fifth-round pick in a rebuilding franchise, doesn't register on that level. Not yet. So when Mahomes takes a hit, it's a problem. When Shedeur does, it's background noise. The fact that Sanders connected those dots so clearly? That's what made this leak explode. And then, Mahomes validated it. According to the transcript, Mahomes reached out to Shedeur directly, privately, off the record, and he didn't deny anything. In fact, he agreed. He acknowledged that yes, the differential treatment is real, that it's not fair, that he benefits from it even though he didn't ask for it, even though he doesn't like it, even though he knows it creates a dangerous double standard. That one moment, Mahomes confirming the system's bias, sent the whole conversation into a different gear. Because now it wasn't just a young quarterback with a complaint. It was the league's most prized player saying, yeah, he's right. So what did the NFL do? They didn't issue an apology. They didn't review the rulebook. They didn't reach out to other quarterbacks for input. Instead, they circled the wagons. Sources say Commissioner Roger Goodell held an emergency meeting with the competition committee. Not to fix the problem, but to manage it. The league issued a boilerplate statement about their ongoing commitment to player safety, then quietly instructed teams to remind young quarterbacks not to publicly criticize officiating or league integrity. So while Sanders exposed the problem and Mahomes confirmed it, the league focused on silencing the fallout. And that silence? It did the opposite of what they hoped. It proved Shedeur's point. Because if the NFL really believed it protected all players equally, it would have welcomed the chance to defend itself. It would have pointed to evidence. It would have invited dialogue. But instead, they treated his words like a threat to their credibility. And that tells you everything. What's happened since then speaks volumes. A private group chat reportedly popped up among young quarterbacks across the league. Not about drama, but about shared experience. Quarterbacks on different teams talking about the hits they've taken, the flags they didn't get, the calls that changed depending on who was under center, and the overwhelming response to Shedeur's leaked comments? Support. Because this wasn't just about him. It was about all of them. About every quarterback not named Mahomes or Burrow or Allen. About the ones trying to prove themselves without the protection that comes with stardom. And here's where the NFL miscalculated. They thought this was a PR problem. They treated it like a story they could bury. But it's not a story, it's a structural fault. And now that it's exposed, more players are watching. More fans are paying attention. And the narrative that quarterback safety is uniform across the league? That's dead. Shedeur's critics tried to bring up his last name. As if being Deion Sanders' son somehow invalidates what he said. As if that gave him an advantage. But what the transcript makes clear is this. Visibility isn't protection. A famous dad doesn't stop the refs from swallowing the whistle. It doesn't stop your ribs from getting crushed after a clean throw. It doesn't buy you the same officiating as a primetime MVP. Shedeur made that distinction loud and clear. His name might have helped get him noticed, but it didn't shield him on the field. It didn't save him from hits. And it definitely didn't protect him from a league more concerned with image than equity. The fact that this entire controversy started with a rule-based observation? That's important. This wasn't some broad, philosophical critique of power structures. It was focused on one rule, roughing the passer. A rule that's written clearly. A rule that's supposed to apply equally. Sanders didn't ask for new protections. He asked for existing ones to be enforced consistently. That's not rebellion. That's common sense. And the fact that he had to risk his reputation just to ask for that? That's the problem. Mahomes' agreement added weight, but the league's silence added proof. Because now we know, without speculation, that the hierarchy is real. That protecting players is still secondary to protecting the league's public face. That fairness only matters when it doesn't threaten the bottom line. So where does this leave the NFL? Cornered. Because the longer they ignore the issue, the more obvious it becomes. Every game, every late hit on a young QB without a flag adds fuel to this fire. Every slow-mo replay of a star QB drawing instant whistles reinforces the divide. The footage won't lie. And the fans won't forget. And as more players start seeing Shedeur's stand as a blueprint instead of a mistake, the harder it'll be for the league to shut it down. The myth of equal protection is collapsing. And unless the NFL decides to confront the bias instead of papering over it, it's only going to get louder. What Shedeur did wasn't reckless. It was necessary. He didn't create the divide, he exposed it. He didn't go looking for controversy, he responded to a hit that should have been flagged but wasn't. And his response echoed because everyone else has been thinking the same thing. He just said it out loud. So now we're here. In the middle of a moment the NFL didn't see coming and clearly wasn't ready for. What do you think? Should the league finally admit that not all quarterbacks are treated equally? Is Shedeur Sanders raising a vital point, or rocking the boat in the wrong way? And where does this leave other players, especially the ones who don't have big contracts or last names that make headlines? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you've noticed the double standards play out week after week. Share it with someone who needs to understand that player safety is only as real as the money behind it. And subscribe if you want more breakdowns on the moments where sports, business, and truth collide. Because if the NFL wants the noise to stop, there's only one way to do it: fix the system. And until they do, you're going to keep hearing about it. And now the clock is ticking. Because what Shedeur Sanders just did isn't going away quietly. Not this week, not next season, and not until the league reckons with the mess it's created. Let's call it what it is. The NFL has been running on a two-tier safety system for years. It just took one young quarterback, one player without a national platform, without a Pro Bowl resume, without the league's PR machine behind him, to expose it for what it really is: a business strategy dressed up as a fairness policy. The hit Shedeur took that started all this? It wasn't unusual. That's the scary part. Hits like that happen to young quarterbacks all the time, late, dangerous, and uncalled. The kind of hits that change careers, shorten seasons, and in some cases do real long-term damage. But they're not the kind of hits that make headlines. Why? Because they happen to players who aren't yet worth protecting, at least not by the NFL's standards. And that's where the hypocrisy hits hardest. The league constantly touts player safety. They have commercials, logos, statements, and weekly campaigns pushing the idea that they're doing everything in their power to protect their athletes. But here's the thing, that everything only seems to apply if your face is on a billboard. Shedeur called out that hypocrisy, not with anger but with evidence. With first-hand experience. with the cold reality of watching game tape where he gets blasted and realizing the refs didn't even flinch. No review. No concern. Just move on. But when Mahomes limps, everything stops. The broadcast slows. Twitter goes into meltdown. Commentators start quoting injury reports in real time. And flags? They fly without hesitation. No one's saying Mahomes doesn't deserve protection. He does. Every quarterback does. That's the point. But the difference in treatment? It's too wide to ignore. Too obvious to write off as human error. It's systemic. And what's worse? Strategic. The league's response said it all. Not a single meaningful reform was proposed. Not a single policy was reevaluated. Instead, Commissioner Roger Goodell called an emergency meeting, not to protect players but to protect the league. The agenda wasn't safety, it was optics. Keep the narrative under control. Caution teams. Silence the rookies. Because the league wasn't worried about Shedeur getting hurt. They were worried about what he said getting hurt. That's the part that can't be overstated. The NFL didn't treat this like a safety issue. They treated it like a PR risk. Because once the public sees that quarterback protection isn't about fairness, but about profit, well, then the whole system starts to look a little shaky, doesn't it? And when you add Mahomes' off-the-record agreement to the mix, the league loses its fallback excuse. Because Mahomes didn't need to say anything. He could have distanced himself. He could have said nothing at all. But he didn't. He acknowledged the truth. He told Sanders directly that the system is unfair, that the imbalance is real, and that even though he didn't ask for the extra protection, he knows it exists. So now we have both ends of the spectrum, one of the league's most marketable stars and one of its least commercially visible players, agreeing on the same thing. The NFL enforces safety based on economic value, not on principle. And the fallout? It's already started. That reported group chat among younger quarterbacks across the league? That's more than a sidebar. It's a spark. A quiet, growing recognition among the next generation of players that the silence they've been expected to maintain isn't just about professionalism. It's about control. Because if you speak up before you've earned your stripes, before you've made the league money, before you're somebody, you're seen as a problem. Not a leader. Not a voice. A problem. But Shedeur flipped that dynamic. And players saw it. He made it clear that speaking out isn't a career killer, it's a responsibility. Especially when the league refuses to acknowledge what everyone inside already knows, that not all quarterbacks are protected equally. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable for the NFL. This moment isn't just about quarterbacks. It's about culture. It's about whether players can challenge institutional norms without being punished or discredited. It's about whether speaking truth to power is still considered brave, or just inconvenient. Because what Shedeur did wasn't disrespectful. It wasn't wild. It wasn't an emotional outburst for attention. It was a critique grounded in fact, in policy, in lived experience, and he made it while knowing full well the risk he was taking. That kind of act? That doesn't get swept under the rug. It gets remembered. And now it's already reshaping how players talk, how they look at each other, how they understand their role, not just as athletes but as people navigating a business that sells equality but enforces hierarchy. The NFL may think this is a story with a short shelf life, but that's not how this works anymore. We're in a different era now. One where the locker room whispers are starting to go public. One where players aren't afraid to challenge the system even before they're millionaires with guaranteed contracts. And fans? They're listening too. Because every week there's footage. There are hits. There are no calls. And now instead of being brushed off, they're being replayed through a different lens. The one Shedeur handed us. So where does the league go from here? It has two choices. Continue pretending the enforcement of player safety is equal, or admit that it isn't and start fixing it. And fixing it means more than issuing a statement. It means reviewing the footage. It means evaluating which quarterbacks are drawing more flags and why. It means holding officials accountable when they let dangerous hits slide just because the player under center isn't a household name. It means finally treating protecting the quarterback as a rule, not a luxury. But the longer the league avoids that reckoning, the worse the fallout's going to get. Because every flag thrown for Mahomes now comes with a side eye. Every no call against a young QB becomes another data point. Every hit is a test. And the fans are watching. The players are watching. The media's watching. And Shedeur? He might not be the most famous quarterback in the league. But he just became the most important one in this conversation. And here's the thing no one in the NFL office wants to admit. They knew this was coming. Maybe not from Shedeur. Maybe not in a leaked meeting. But this moment, The exposure, the outrage, the solidarity, it was inevitable. Because you can only build a system on selective enforcement for so long before someone finally snaps and calls it what it is. A business model, not a rulebook. That's the part Shedeur Sanders made crystal clear. When he spoke up, he didn't just point out a flaw. He revealed the architecture of the entire quarterback protection system. A system that rewards revenue, not responsibility. That enforces safety based on jersey sales, not injury risk. And the fact that this revelation came from inside the NFL, from a player who lives that double standard every week, made it impossible to ignore, no matter how hard the league tried. It all goes back to that film session. One moment, one hit, no flag. And in that moment, Shedeur wasn't just reacting to pain, he was reacting to the pattern. The accumulation. Hit after hit, game after game, no call, no consequences. And finally, he said what every young quarterback has wanted to say: why doesn't the rule protect me? Because that's the question the league still refuses to answer. Let's talk about Mahomes again. Because this isn't an attack on him, it never was. Shedeur made that clear. He wasn't blaming Mahomes for the imbalance. He was naming him as an example of it. The system treats Mahomes differently because Mahomes means money. A rolled ankle from him sends ripple effects across primetime ratings, sports betting markets, sponsorship campaigns, and fantasy leagues. Of course he's protected like the crown jewel. But Shedeur? Or any other young quarterback trying to climb the depth chart on a losing team? They don't move the needle. Their pain isn't expensive. Their absence doesn't crash the stock price. So when they take a cheap shot, it's just another play. Another page in the script that no one's bothering to read. That's the cold reality Shedeur unpacked. And the fact that Mahomes agreed in a private phone call only made it more damning. Because when the most protected player in the league quietly tells you, yeah, it's not fair, what else is there to say? You can't spin that. You can't ignore that. Not when the footage backs it up. Not when quarterbacks across teams are now privately saying, he's right. That group chat of young QBs? That's more than just digital venting. It's a sign of what's coming next: collective awareness. Players starting to connect the dots. Starting to push back against the idea that silence equals loyalty. Starting to understand that the rules don't serve them equally, and maybe never have. And it's not just about quarterback hits anymore. It's about trust. Can players really believe the league's safety promises when those promises come with fine print? When enforcement depends on your brand, not your body. When your well-being is tied to how many people tuned into your last game. That's the existential question now. And the NFL's response so far? A boilerplate statement and a behind-the-scenes muzzle order. That's it. That's all the league had to offer after a starting quarterback said point blank, the system treats us unequally, and a superstar confirmed it. No policy shift. No rule reevaluation. No accountability. Just optics. That reaction didn't close the story. It validated it. It told every player, every fan, every analyst that the NFL doesn't want this problem solved, it wants it silenced. But the silence isn't holding. Now, every time a late hit on a young QB goes uncalled, someone mentions Shedeur. Every time a star player draws a flag for something softer, someone posts the comparison. It's already in the discourse. You can't remove it now. And the more the league avoids the issue, the more it snowballs. Because the hits keep coming. The injuries keep happening. And the footage keeps contradicting the narrative. You can't keep selling player safety when the product looks like favoritism. You can't keep saying, we treat everyone equally, when even your top players know that isn't true. And it's not just about the roughing the passer calls. It's about the message those calls send. That some players are irreplaceable and others are disposable. That the league will move mountains to protect its investments, but everyone else? Strap up and hope for the best. That's what Shedeur exposed. And let's be real, he had everything to lose. He's not locked into a massive contract. He's not a franchise cornerstone. He doesn't have endorsement deals buffering his job security. Speaking up in this league at his level is a risk. And he took it anyway. That's not reckless. That's courageous. And that courage has already started shifting how players talk to each other. There's a new awareness building. You can feel it. Quarterbacks who once kept their heads down are now watching their own tape differently. Listening to each other more. Sharing stories they used to bury. And what comes next? That's on the NFL. They can either take this seriously, publicly acknowledge the inconsistencies, and start making changes that actually reflect their stated values, or they can keep pretending. Keep issuing press releases and hoping it all fades away. Keep hoping another viral moment, another big game, pushes this story out of the spotlight. But the thing is, this isn't just a story. It's the truth. And it's out. And if the league doesn't change, if they keep prioritizing perception over protection, then don't be surprised when more players start speaking up. Don't be shocked when that quiet group chat turns into something louder, something public, something organized. Because once a system gets exposed, it doesn't return to normal. It changes. Or it crumbles. That's where the NFL is right now. Shedeur Sanders lit the fuse. Mahomes confirmed the charge. And now the countdown has started. Either the league addresses the double standard, or it becomes the story that defines this generation of players. So what do you think? Is Shedeur the voice the NFL needed, or the one it's trying to silence? Should the league come clean about how it protects quarterbacks, or keep pretending the flag flies equally for everyone? And how much longer can fans be expected to believe in a level playing field when the evidence says otherwise? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you've ever seen your team's quarterback take a late hit with no flag, now's your chance to speak on it. Like if you're tired of the double standard. Share this with someone who thinks the rule book is enough. And subscribe if you want to keep digging into the stories the league won't talk about. Because what Shedeur said wasn't just about him. It was about every player who's been told to stay quiet. And after this, quiet's no longer an option.